Hello and welcome back to the channel. The manhwa we are going to recap today is about a girl who is reincarnated as the ugly duchess. So let's begin our recap. A woman walks into the elegant ballroom as the women around her start saying "oh my" with shocked expressions on their faces. The woman stands there calmly and thinks to herself, which delicious dessert should she eat first from the elaborate display before her? She carefully considers her options and decides she should eat the softest one first, right? All right. Let's eat the beautiful strawberry cake first that looks so tempting and sweet. The woman takes a careful bite of the fluffy cake and thinks to herself it's so incredibly delicious and so wonderfully soft against her tongue. Should she try the colorful fruit tart now that sits elegantly on the silver platter? The woman suddenly hears another woman nearby saying, "ugh," with clear disgust, so she immediately froze in place. She listens carefully as she hears them talking in hushed whispers about how could she possibly attend the prestigious imperial dance party dressed like that in such shabby clothes? Shouldn't they quickly stop her from embarrassing herself further? How could anyone look so terribly ugly and unkempt at such an important social gathering? The woman thinks to herself about these familiar cruel gazes and harsh whispers that follow her everywhere, as a man nearby says with contempt, "such a complete disgrace to all the respectable nobles gathered here tonight." The woman says to herself about the obvious disgust displayed so clearly on their aristocratic faces. Yeah, this is exactly the damned high-class noble socializing she expected to encounter. The woman smiles broadly while thinking to herself that she feels so incredibly proud of her performance tonight. She knows she is truly an amazing woman named Cho Yeon-sul, who has mastered this difficult act. Great, she has successfully done it again today, with perfect execution. So she'll confidently go back to her residence now. Cho, now in lullaby, proudly walks back through the ornate hallways as another woman watches in complete silence, and says to herself with bewilderment that she doesn't even feel embarrassed or ashamed. How can she possibly be so confident and self-assured, despite everyone's obvious mockery? Lila looks out through the heavy wooden door in thoughtful silence, and the scene cuts dramatically to show her looking through her enchanted magic pouch, while saying clearly comb. A beautiful silver comb suddenly appears in her hands, and she carefully brushes her tangled hair, while saying quietly that the buff protagonist character is truly terrifying to deal with. Lila thinks seriously to herself that today was definitely a particularly heavy and exhausting day filled with challenges. She vividly remembers the harsh, judgmental gaze directed at her throughout the evening, but looks peacefully outside the moving carriage window in contemplative silence. The scene cuts smoothly to show a grand mansion where a well-dressed lady says with surprise, "She's finally back, miss." Lila responds curtly, "Yes, she's definitely back." Is the servant completely blind and stupid? Can't she clearly see that she has returned home? Lila thinks irritably to herself that anyone with half a brain would naturally think she has become a proper baroness with real status. Lila rudely shoves the servant off to the side with her sharp shoulder. The lady says awkwardly anyways, and continues saying that if her physical looks aren't particularly great, at least she should try to have a genuinely good personality. Lila gets visibly startled in sudden anger but carefully thinks to herself, as she firmly tells herself no, she must hold on and stay calm. Hold on tight, Lila. Lila gets onto her comfortable sofa and stretches out completely from pure exhaustion, as she thinks wearily to herself that the servant will surely tell her beloved big brother Louis about tonight's events. Right? Because they are currently dating each other seriously, her dear cousin big brother Louis is actually a respected baron with real power. That's exactly why she absolutely must be much harder on poor Becky in the future, so that way both her precious big brother Louis and the gossiping maid will definitely think she's completely terrible and unworthy. Lila jumps up in genuine excitement and says, happily, "Good job, Cho Yeon-sul. Good job." There's really not much precious time left before everything changes. Phew, let's take a relaxing hot bath first, because she's getting increasingly frustrated with everything. Her real birth name is Cho Yeon-sul, and she works professionally as the person in charge of makeup for the famous top actress, Jin Yora. The angry woman yells loudly at her, saying harshly, "Why is she always so annoyingly slow? Can't she possibly move any faster with her work?" Cho responds quietly, all right, as she sobs silently to herself and thinks desperately to herself that being in charge of makeup for the demanding top actress, Jin Yura, is definitely an honorable position, but also a very difficult and stressful job. A cruel voice is clearly heard saying, "Cho Yeon-sul, she heard through gossip she applied for work just to seduce handsome actors?" Absolutely unbelievable and disgusting. Cho thinks bitterly to herself about the constant verbal bullying and clear slander that follows her everywhere. Cho hears Jin-yura saying coldly that she truly hates people who pretend to be nice like her. Isn't that just a calculated way to attract a lot of male attention? Cho thinks sadly to herself about these petty, cruel things that she can't even properly answer with a strong argument. And at the very end, a speeding car is rushing dangerously towards both Cho and Jin-yura, with both of them frozen in complete shock. The heavy car slams violently into them, and Cho thinks desperately to herself that, in the end, she's even losing her precious life because of Jin-yura's cruelty. Cho says with amazement that the mysterious Grim Reaper appeared directly before her, and the Grim Reaper said apologetically that he's terribly sorry he accidentally brought her here to this strange place. In fair return, he will definitely help her become the main protagonist of her own story. That's exactly what he promised her. Cho wakes up as a small toddler as she sobs uncontrollably, and thinks to herself that she has possessed Lila El Este, who is the protagonist of the popular novel Bird in a Cage, or the full abbreviation for Birds Feel Happy When They Are Trapped in a Cage. There are exactly 3 male protagonists in the complex novel Bird in a Cage: Crown Prince Theobald Vasium Ivrinia with his royal power, Duke Heinrich V. Frederick with his vast wealth, and Marquis Alfonso Lubiniere with his charm. In the original novel, Lila is violently kidnapped and imprisoned by the 3 dangerous male protagonists, and then in the tragic end, she takes a mysterious pill given by the Crown Prince, and her mind becomes completely foolish. In the devastating end, she takes a powerful pill given by the Crown Prince, and her mind becomes permanently foolish. If it's a bad ending, it's definitely a bad ending. But what does merry bad ending actually mean anyway, huh? To get completely out of the original storyline, she made a deliberate appearance that wouldn't attract their dangerous attention. She could clearly hear the people talking with shock, saying, "Oh my God, how could anyone from a noble family look like that?" Lila thinks cleverly to herself that she also acted deliberately short-tempered so she could be completely alone. It's really not difficult when she thinks of Jin-yura's terrible attitude. She absolutely can't reach the tragic end like poor Lila. With her professional makeup skills and determination, she will change everything. A female protagonist finds herself imprisoned alternately by 3 powerful male protagonists in a twisted cycle of captivity. The disturbing reason for such a completely crazy and torturous situation happening to an innocent young woman is due to the special bizarre law that exists in the dark novel Bird in the Cage. Lila spawns a modern hairdryer from her enchanted magic bag and thinks seriously to herself about the dreaded pre-wedding training rules that govern this strange world. It's specifically the mandatory wedding training process that becomes the biggest and most dangerous problem she must face. The cruel pre-wedding training rules are actually special binding laws in the mighty Baesium Empire, which officially upholds the sacred values of romance and love, where couples who are involved in arranged political marriage must test their compatibility with one another by living together in complete isolation in the man's house for exactly 1 full year. With this twisted legal rule firmly in place, the 3 dangerous men can legally imprison poor Lila without any consequences for their actions, and Cho gets violent shivers running down her spine and says with horror that the entire process is extremely indecent and extreme beyond belief. The reason why this is so disturbing is because this particular novel is written specifically for mature adults only. Can't she do absolutely anything she wants with this precious new life that has been given to her? Leah jumps energetically on her soft bed and thinks desperately to herself while sobbing uncontrollably that it's all because of that careless soul reaper who brought her here. And it would be so much nicer if he had put her in a lighthearted romantic comedy genre instead. Well, she's definitely here anyway, in this dark world, whether she likes it or not. She looks gratefully at the magical bag beside her and says with genuine appreciation, "Thank you for giving her that incredibly useful bag that contains everything she needs." Exactly 9 years ago when she first arrived, Lila was sobbing heartbrokenly while thinking desperately to herself that she honestly didn't think she'd actually end up trapped in the dangerous novel. But out of all the possible choices available, why did she have to become the tragic female protagonist whose entire life will be so completely miserable and full of suffering? What's the real point of being a protagonist if it means nothing good? If her predetermined fate is to become someone with a permanent mental disability caused by drugs? Lila sobs loudly and says with anger that the Soul Reaper is truly evil and heartless. He carelessly put her in this terrible place so thoughtlessly, and it's absolutely not fair to her. What should she possibly do now in this hopeless situation? Lila continues sobbing and says again with desperation that it's really not fair at all. The mysterious Reaper suddenly comes floating in, saying curiously that he wonders who's crying so incredibly loudly that it's disturbing the peace. Lila looks directly at him with anger and says accusingly, "You did this to me." The Reaper says calmly that he came here specifically to atone for his terrible mistakes that he made to her. He will graciously get her exactly one special item she wants from this world. But unfortunately, among all the countless items she could choose, there are restrictions. Lila says with frustration, why are there so many annoying limitations when she tries to ask for something reasonable? The Reaper says casually, "Oh well," as he turns around slowly and starts leaving without caring. Lila says desperately, "Wait! No! She definitely has an important request. Give her back her professional makeup bag that she used for work." The Reaper asks with curiosity, does she mean a small portable bag? Or something exactly like that? Lila says quickly, "Hold on just a second," while she thinks. The Reaper magically puts down a leather bag on the ground. The Reaper asks helpfully, "Like this specific bag?" To which she says with relief, "Yes, exactly like that perfect bag." He uses his powerful magic abilities and asks with satisfaction, "Well, is that definitely enough for her? There's absolutely nothing more he can possibly do for her now in this situation. Don't ever call him again because he's extremely busy with other important matters." Lila thinks bitterly to herself that he just carelessly put her in this dangerous place and then completely disappears like nothing happened. But the important coming-of-age celebration ceremony will be held very soon, and in the original work, Lila becomes completely obsessed with the coming-of-age celebration ceremony and its traditions. That's exactly why it's absolutely crucial and important for her to get through the coming-of-age celebration ceremony safely, without attracting the wrong attention. She says quietly to herself that she'll definitely be okay somehow, because she has tried her best to endure countless insults and terrible curses so far without breaking down. If there really is a merciful God watching over her, she begs desperately, please let her be completely free from the original dangerous storyline that leads to her doom. Becky knocks loudly on the heavy door and says formally, "Miss, this is Becky, your servant." Lila tells her to come in immediately. Becky says with surprise that she's up unusually early today, miss. She glares suspiciously at her, saying, "But did she actually bathe properly, like a lady should?" Lila says of course she did. She thinks proudly to herself that she has struggled intensely to dress up since early in the morning specifically, so that's why she looks absolutely the worst possible. Her amazing makeup skills that can defeat the protagonist's natural buff no matter how hard she tries, she can't help but praise this incredible ability. Lila says with irritation, why is she here bothering her at this early hour? Say what you need quickly and leave immediately. Becky says respectfully that she came here specifically to tell her that the Baron wants her presence at breakfast. Please come to the dining room right away. Complete silence erupts in the room, and Becky looks directly at her and says seriously, and please try to behave like a proper noble lady. Does she even know how much trouble and embarrassment the Baron has gone through because of her terrible behavior? So she should feel deeply ashamed towards the Baron. Lila was completely startled and was left feeling confused and startled by the harsh words. She gets up angrily while yelling out loudly, "What did you say? Who should feel more ashamed in this situation?" She thinks furiously to herself, does she even know who ate more greedily than her yesterday at dinner? She has her own good reasons, but why does that particular person do that without shame? Just everyone in this entire house should watch carefully. Once she successfully gets out of the original dangerous story, she'll leave this terrible place right away forever. Lila, with a deliberately sassy mood, says sarcastically, "Good morning, dear brother." To which the Baron says sternly that he told her specifically not to be late for meals. Lila says, mockingly, "Really?" "Yes, yes, of course." Lila thinks to herself that the man keeps grumbling constantly about everything. The Baron asks with disapproval what made her choose to wear such a ridiculous dress like that yesterday. Lila asks with defiance what's wrong with her beautiful dress. It's so incredibly beautiful, so she wore it proudly. The Baron says with disgust, what happened to her sense of beauty and style? How can she possibly call that weird bird feather dress beautiful by any standards? Lila says with attitude HMPH, it's strange. She's also very curious about his questionable sister's beauty standards. They both glare intensely at each other, and the Baron says whatever she's thinking, she absolutely has to look normal during the coming-of-age ceremony. Even someone like her eventually has to get married to someone, Lila's heart drops suddenly, and Lila says to herself, is he doing this because she wants to? She also wants to date and get married like normal people. Lila gets up saying she'll go back first, brother. The Baron says, huh. Luckily it seems she still has some shame left. Anyways, a disgrace is still a disgrace no matter what. Lila walks out clenching her fist tightly in pure anger and says, disgrace? Ha! Disgrace he dares say? Just wait, brother. Because the previous disgrace will be far better than the one at the coming-of-age ceremony. Lila stands proudly in her deliberately shocking new outfit as the horrified maid looks at her and says with complete disgust, oh my god, what kind of terrible dress is that supposed to be? The maid says, ugh, with visible disgust written all over her face. Lila thinks confidently to herself, does this outrageous appearance help with providing the strength she needs for her plan? Yes, it's definitely more repulsive than she could have hoped for. That's exactly what she desperately wants to achieve. The coming-of-age celebration ceremony is finally here. The Grand Imperial Festival is specifically a coming-of-age celebration designed for the nobility's precious descendants to be presented to society. In the original dark story at this important coming-of-age celebration, Lila's predetermined fate will begin to dangerously intertwine with the three main male characters who will destroy her life. And this fateful meeting causes terrible jealousy from the antagonist Charlotte, who starts causing serious trouble from this very day onward. And this leads to a completely terrible future filled with suffering. Truly, she's incredibly grateful for this detailed diary that contains all the plot information. For this precious diary and its convenient size is very helpful since it fits perfectly inside her cosmetic box, allowing her to review today's story whenever needed. Everything will definitely be alright if she follows her plan. Lila clenches her fist tightly while thinking determinedly to herself because she has read the entire story several times and memorized every detail. They finally get to their destination, and Lila says quietly to herself, the temporary shame today is necessary to secure her bright future. There's absolutely no need to feel ashamed, because she's not the doomed protagonist in this version of events. Lila thinks resolutely to herself that she has been carefully preparing for this crucial day for exactly 9 long years. Today is the day when the story will absolutely not be the same as the original tragic version. Everyone at the elegant celebration looks at her in complete shock, and they start talking frantically about, oh my god, she must be completely crazy. Did she actually come dressed like that to such an important event? Isn't that excessive, even for someone with no taste? There's no formality at all in her appearance. Didn't anyone try to stop her before she came here looking like this? Lila thinks triumphantly to herself that this shocked reaction is good because it definitely worked exactly as planned. She suddenly hears a refined woman saying, oh my, with admiration. So Lila takes a careful glance in that direction. The beautiful dress that Miss Charlotte is wearing elegantly, it's definitely the one displayed prominently in the exclusive Raphael's boutique, right? She's absolutely sure she heard they weren't selling it to just anyone. It's truly beautiful and expensive looking. Lila thinks nervously to herself about the dangerous Charlotte and what her presence means. That means the main plot will appear very soon now. A royal knight announces loudly, pay respect everyone. To His Majesty the Emperor, Her Majesty the Empress, and to the Crown Prince. Crown Prince Theobald, Duke Heinrich, and Marquis Alfonso all enter majestically, the 3 main male characters who will ruin her life. The Emperor says regally, let's begin the ceremony as he sat down on his golden throne, and the worker says formally the coming-of-age celebration is about to start officially. First in the ceremonial line is the daughter of Count Pinatelli, Charlotte P. Pinatelli, please step forward gracefully. Charlotte bows down elegantly and says respectfully she greets the imperial son, His Majesty the Emperor, and the imperial moon, Her Majesty the Empress, with proper reverence. The Emperor congratulates her warmly on her coming-of-age ceremony. He sincerely hopes she can contribute meaningfully to the empire in the future. Charlotte says gratefully, thank you, Your Majesty, for your kind words. She will always strive devotedly for the Bazium Empire and its prosperity. Theobald smiles approvingly at her beautiful presentation, and the worker announces next in line for the ceremony. Lila looks down sadly while thinking honestly to herself that she's genuinely jealous of Charlotte's position. If only this wasn't a sad and dark novel filled with tragedy, she would proudly show off her amazing dressing skills to everyone. And maybe she would naturally meet the person she's truly destined for. And all these complicated thoughts might not matter at all. The worker announces finally, lastly, Baron's daughter, Miss Lila El Este, please step forward for your presentation. The emperor looks at her with obvious nervousness as she bows down awkwardly and says she greets His Majesty the Emperor and Her Majesty the Empress as required. He says with a clear grudge in his voice, Lila El Este, congratulations on reaching your coming of age. Lila says politely, thank you, Your Majesty, for acknowledging her. She thinks relieved to herself that she's almost done with this part, and she turns while thinking to herself that now, if she falls down as expected in her plan, someone suddenly pushes her deliberately off the ceremonial stairs, and Lila falls down hard on the cold ground, while thinking frantically to herself, who exactly pushed her down? People in the crowd laugh cruelly at her, saying it must be incredibly hard to be that pathetically bad at everything. She waddles awkwardly like a clumsy duck, trying to get up. Lila's eyes get teary with embarrassment, as she says desperately to herself, Alfonso, Heinrich, Theobald. She must check their reactions. Good, none of the three dangerous men are showing any interest in her whatsoever. She's doing incredibly well with her plan. So this painful embarrassment isn't a real problem for her ultimate goal. But this moment is still so incredibly embarrassing and humiliating. Charlotte calls out sweetly Lila, as Lila quickly wipes her tears and looks up at her with confusion. The lady standing behind Charlotte says curiously, oh Charlotte, what's happening up there? Charlotte says with false concern, thanks, Monica, for asking. She was completely shocked by what she'd just witnessed happen. She can't stand to look at such a pathetic display. Yes, how could anyone be so terribly ugly and clumsy? Is she really a respected noble's daughter? A smooth voice is heard, and it's Alfonso saying charmingly that he came looking for Charlotte. She took so incredibly long to find. Lila thinks with panic to herself, Duke Heinrich and Marquis Alfonso are here. He asks flirtatiously, but what are these beautiful ladies doing gathered here? Lila startles violently and thinks desperately to herself, no, she almost didn't successfully avoid meeting them at the coming-of-age ceremony. Lila says quickly she's terribly sorry, but she absolutely has to excuse herself immediately, as she runs off frantically. Alfonso says with amazement, wow, is she even human? She used to be reasonably cute when she was just a little child. Charlotte thinks calculatingly to herself, but then develops an evil smirk as Lila dashes off frantically, while thinking urgently to herself that she needs to get home immediately, because the main event is almost completely over. She accidentally bumps directly into Theobald, and she falls hard on the ground again as she recognizes this familiar, painful sound. Theobald looks down at her with a completely disgusted face and says coldly that her eyesight doesn't look particularly good at all. Lila looks up at him with horror while thinking to herself that this is the Crown Prince Theobald, the most dangerous of the three male leads. She scrambles to get up quickly, while saying frantically that she's incredibly sorry, Your Highness, for this accident. Theobald continues looking at her with obvious disgust and disdain. Lila thinks desperately to herself that she needs to get away from him immediately before he becomes interested in her. Lila is so confused. She had tried so hard to avoid him, yet she still ends up here. She bows to him quickly and takes her leave. Theobald sighs, thinking to himself, so this is the woman everyone talks about, the one known for being ugly. But he believes she's even worse than what he imagined. She doesn't suit the imperial palace at all. Someone then taps him, pulling him out of his thoughts. It's Charlotte. She smiles at him, and Theobald thinks to himself, exactly, this is the kind of woman who suits the imperial palace. Yet, something about the whole situation feels strange. Lila had a sweet scent, one that doesn't match her supposedly ugly appearance. Does he mean that ugly people are supposed to smell bad? Now, Louis is seen rushing towards Lila, shouting at her about the disgraceful act she committed yesterday. Her eyes are all puffy from crying the entire night, and here they go again. Louis begins yelling that he can't tolerate her any longer. He reminds her that her father, the previous head of the family, entrusted him with her care. But that doesn't mean he's gonna let her do whatever she wants. This makes Lila furious. How dare this little piece of trash bring up her father? Louis had been the happiest person when her father died. He's the one now living happily in her family's wealth. She's angry. How can he pretend as if he's being generous to her? And then he drops the bomb. He announces that he's planning to take Becky as his wife after she gets married, but at this rate, he doesn't think anyone will marry her. He declares that tomorrow, he'll send marriage proposals to every family, offering her to whoever is willing to take this garbage. Until then, he won't give her a single coin of financial support, so she shouldn't even think about going out. She is to stay put. As he leaves, Becky sniffs and scoffs, saying that Lila should have been more careful. Now that Lila knows she and Louis are in a relationship, she's going to drop the act and speak plainly. She tells Lila to listen to her elders and mocks her for being so pathetic. Becky then walks away, leaving Lila all alone, sad and miserable. Lila squeezes her bedsheet tightly. She bites her tongue and convinces herself that maybe staying quiet is the right move. Revealing her true identity would do her no good. Everything is going exactly as she planned, so she just needs to hold on for one more year. She only needs to survive until May, when the imprisonment begins. In the original novel, she sighs at the window, reminding herself that she just needs to wait a little longer. Several months pass just like that. The seasons change as usual, and except for Louis and Becky's constant harassment, her days pass by quietly. This is what she originally wanted, but she begins to feel rather bored. Not a single marriage proposal has come her way. Then, someone knocks on her door. A maid informs her that Louis is calling for her. Becky is no longer working as a maid. Now that she has free time, she spends it harassing Lila and eyeing her belongings. Lila has to hide her pouch under her dress every day. Eventually they arrive at Louis's office, where he greets her with suspicious enthusiasm. Lila is confused as to why he's in such a good mood. He gestures for her to sit and announces that a marriage proposal has come her way. He asks if she's heard of Duke Montel. Louis explains that Duke Montel governs the far north, and his family is not only one of the 2 ducal houses in the empire, but also shares blood ties with the imperial family. Most importantly, she should feel grateful. Duke Montel has been excluded from high society because of his ugly appearance. Louis says Montel and Lila will make a fitting couple. Lila doesn't have high expectations. She's never heard of Duke Montel in the original novel, but she's relieved that he isn't one of the 3 male leads. That alone is good enough for her. Louis tells her bluntly that they don't need anything from her anymore. She'll be leaving for Duke Montel's estate tomorrow. When Lila remarks that it seems rather sudden, Louis snaps. Will she take responsibility if the Duke changes his mind? He's already sick of her leeching off the household. If she truly wants to show her gratitude for being allowed to stay all this time, she should pack her things and get the hell out. The next day, she's standing outside, tears in her eyes. She can't believe this is happening. How could they just send her off to a complete stranger all of a sudden? She doesn't care if he's ugly or exiled, but what if he has a horrible personality too? That's what she's thinking, until she sees Duke Montel for the first time. And she wonders, exactly how could anyone call this man ugly? Lila is utterly confused. This man was supposed to be ugly, wasn't he? But he's dazzling. She stares at him, prompting him to glance over, concerned, as if something is wrong. She can't help but stare. He is exactly her type. With his freckles and that beauty mark, he may not be considered one of the textbook beauties of the empire, but those imperfections make him perfect in her eyes. Yet she can guess one more thing. This man must have a twisted personality. Montel remarks that he had already sent a carriage for her, so it seems she received the letter. Lila thinks back to how Louis had clearly intended to humiliate her by sending her in that shabby old carriage. He hadn't shown her a single ounce of kindness until the very end. Seeing her looking downcast, Montel comments that she must be tired from the long journey and suggests they talk tomorrow after she's rested. But Lila insists that they talk about everything now. She asks him where they should go. He sighs and tells her to follow him. Vincent steps forward, offering to take her bag to her room. Lila watches Montel and notices how kindly he speaks to his servant, yet there's still something cold about him. On top of that, he's a duke, and he's marrying a mere baron's daughter. There must be a reason things have come to this point. She refuses to put herself in danger, so she's determined to make sure she is safe first. Montel says he understands that she must have many questions, such as why he sent a marriage proposal to a woman he had never met before. He explains that he had 2 reasons for doing so. The first is that he is displeased by a particular rumor going around about him, and the second is that the imperial family is attempting to meddle in his business. He explains that after his older brother, the former duke, died, his brother's wife began acting as if she were the duchess of the household. The king wants the dukedom to remain strong, since it's part of the imperial family, and so he wants that same woman to take the position of duchess. Lila nods, but then asks what the rumor is that he found so displeasing. Montel clears his throat and says it's the rumor that he cannot perform like a man, simply because he hasn't courted anyone. That too is one of his reasons. He also has a nephew, his older brother's son. Originally, the boy was going to inherit the dukedom, but he's still very young. That's why Montel was named as the heir in the meantime. Montel then tells Lila that even after marrying him, she won't be expected to perform any duties as a wife. This is why he chose her. Neither of them is going to try to satisfy the other. Most importantly, he doesn't need anything like love in his life. This declaration makes Lila's eyes widen slightly. Montel makes it clear that as long as she doesn't cross any lines, he'll give her half of his wealth after they are officially married. These are all of his conditions. He then asks if she has any of her own. She says she does, but oops, they'll find out what it is later. Vincent then takes her to the room she'll be staying in. The room is absolutely insane in both size and decor. The ducal house is truly on another level. She's never seen a room like this in her entire life. Perhaps this might be a good thing. She's going to live here for a year under these conditions, after all. So the condition she gave to Montel is that after they're officially married, she wants him to act as though she's dead. Montel is stunned. What the hell is she talking about? She clarifies that she's not asking him to actually kill her. She just wants him to make it look like she no longer exists. He realizes that she wants him to create a new identity for her. He points out that if she changes countries, he might not be able to provide full financial support anymore. But she says that's not a problem. A fresh identity is all she really needs. She reassures him not to worry about the rumors. There are plenty of strange rumors about her too. He glares and says that such gossip shouldn't bother her. He wonders aloud, is that really all she wants? She nods. And just like that, they've discussed everything, even while taking a bath. Lila thinks to herself that she's endured 10 years already, so spending a single year like this will be nothing. She's a little wary, since the Duke seems somewhat cold, but it's not like she's hoping for love either. There are only 2 months left until May, when the imprisonment ends in the original novel. Since things have turned out this way, she might as well make good use of this 1 year in this place. Now she's all dressed up in that ugly makeup and hairstyle. It's their first day as a married couple after all, and this is the least she can do. She looks around and notices a child peeking at her. She wonders what he's doing. She greets him with a gentle nod, but he flinches. He looks exactly like Montel, so he must be the nephew of the former Duke. Lila finds him super cute, but this little boy immediately snaps at her, asking what exactly she's staring at, and walks away. Lila is left thinking, maybe this kid isn't an angel after all, but a devil in disguise. The three of them are eating, but the atmosphere is unbearably suffocating. Still, Lila thinks this is heavenly compared to the noisy meals she used to endure with Louis. She wonders, though, do they always eat this quietly? Montel suddenly asks Michael if he has greeted his future aunt. If he hasn't, he should go and say hello. But Michael just stares at her, dumbfounded, turning his head away again. It looks as though this little kid completely despises her. But this isn't the first time a child has despised her. Michael's hands slip, and the knife clatters to the floor. A maid immediately steps in and hands him another one. Lila assumes he must be quite sensitive, but then again, he's just a child. However, when the knife slips from his hand again, she begins to suspect something is wrong. She notices his trembling fingers and quietly accepts another fork from the maid, but the atmosphere around him is far from kind. All the servants and maids are behaving strangely, and it makes Lila wonder if they are treating him like this on purpose. She calls Vincent over and whispers something to him with a cheerful smile. Vincent nods and says he will fetch it right away. He then relays the message to the maid. The new dish is presented to her with an elegant flourish. Lila begins cutting her steak and asks the maid to place it at Michael's side. She adds, kindly but firmly, that the knife and fork given to him earlier were too heavy for a child. Next time, they should provide him with something lighter. Michael seems to like the new setup, and Lila knows better than anyone how people can look at others. Sneaky, yet shameless. She used to experience this kind of thing constantly in high society, so she knows how difficult it must be for a child to endure such treatment. Montel glances at her briefly, then turns his face away again, Later, Montel retreats to his room with a sigh. He thinks that Lila looks like an entirely different person now. If it weren't for her scent, he wouldn't have believed that she is the same girl from their childhood. Back then, she used to look at him like he was something filthy. It was the same look the Crown Prince used to give him and his brother whenever he mocked their appearance. He still remembers that day when he couldn't even lift his head, so ashamed he had been. Yet, for some reason, even now, he still can't forget her scent, the one that touched both his heart and his senses. He recalls that the marriage proposal came from her this time, not the other way around. And he tells Vincent that he's going to accept it. He needs to confirm the truth with his own eyes. If he could experience that scent again, maybe he could understand. He's confused now. Her face, her voice, her personality, everything has changed. It's only natural that he feels different from before. But that's where it should end. He doesn't need love. He sighs and thinks that this is simply something he must endure. This need to bow his head to the imperial family and their cursed romanticism. All of this just because he and the imperial family share the blood of the wolf god, the forefather of the imperial bloodline, lupus running through their veins. The history of the Bazium Empire begins with the tale of Lupus, the wolf god. Lupus, bound by the instincts of his kind, fell deeply in love with a human woman. A wolf, after all, only ever loves one mate until death, and Lupus was no exception. He loved his only wife and their children dearly. As a nation that worships Lupus, the Bazium Empire has always placed high value on love and romance. But once the custom of arranged marriages took root, the meaning of romance shifted, especially among the nobility. People began to treat marriage and family as nothing more than a business transaction. Real love was reserved for lovers outside the marriage. Michael's parents and older brother were no different. After having him, his parents focused entirely on treasuring their respective lovers. His brother also neglected him and had been rushing to meet his lover on the day he died in that carriage accident. Michael wonders, if those lovers were so precious to them, then why didn't they marry them? How could they marry someone they didn't love? What even is the point of a marriage system like that among nobles? He's grown sick of romance and all the sentiment surrounding it. Now Montel discusses the contract with her. He tells her that the conditions she asked for have been added, and he wants her to read it over so she can make adjustments if needed. She looks through the new identity she's going to adopt in a small kingdom that values artists. A woman who suddenly appeared one day, once a noble lady, now a lover of art, who travels the continent until she finally settles down. Montel asks if there's anything she'd like to change, but she says no. This is all good. In fact, she genuinely loves it and even thanks him. Montel doesn't quite understand why she needs a new identity. All she needs to do is marry him. That was the only condition the king set for him. She wonders why he's so fixated on following the conditions exactly. As a royal, he could easily reject them if he wanted to. She tells him she has a question and says it's an urgent matter. Why aren't they already married if this is so important? And why is the wedding scheduled for May? He tells her it's because he can only marry after his coming-of-age ceremony. That makes her gasp. He's younger than her? She didn't expect that. She says to him that she honestly thought he was older than her, but then she laughs and says it's okay. She never told him her age either. He then asks her to sign the contract now. Lila notices the pen is fitted with magical crystals. She's never seen a magic crystal in person before, but considering he's a duke, it makes sense. Once she's done signing, Montel asks Vincent to bring the water bowl. Montel drops the contract paper into the bowl and explains to her that this is how his family handles sensitive documents. The ink and pen are enchanted with a special stone, allowing the contract to be sealed securely. She comments that it feels like magic. He adds that Michael will be going to the academy soon, so he'll only be home during the summers, and that's the only time she'll really need to keep an eye on him. He asks her to leave now. As she's leaving, she says they should try to get along for the next year. He tells her that he will do his best to respect her as his wife. Once she's gone, Montel falls into deep thought. Only the imperial family knows about magic in this empire, so how does she recognize it? But that's not all. She doesn't remember the times when everyone used to mock him. Her gaze, her appearance, her expression, everything has changed. Yet she still has that same scent. He senses something off about her. Meanwhile, Lila notices the garden still has hydrangeas. Vincent explains that it's because they resemble the eye color of his mate. These flowers only grow here, in this family's land, since they too carry the bloodline of the wolf god. She keeps addressing him as Sir, but he tells her not to be formal. After all, she'll soon be the Duchess. He then says he'll go prepare some tea for her. She still feels strange being treated like this, but thanks to the Duke, her future no longer seems so bleak. She hopes everything will work out for her. Then, she begins to hear something. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. She turns around to see if there's anyone there, but the voice stops. She wonders if it's an intruder, or maybe just an animal. Wanting to make sure, she decides to check so she can warn the others if necessary. She cautiously walks toward the sound, but then she stops, stunned by what she sees. It is Michael. He shouts at Lila, demanding to know what she's staring at, and calls her a little ugly hag in the same breath. She is instantly pissed. Does this brat really have to call her ugly every time they meet? He shouts again, telling her not to just stand there and to untangle this mess. Lila sighs, exasperated, and tells him this isn't the way to ask someone for help. She asks him to repeat after her, to say, "Please untangle this for me." The words make him shiver slightly, and all slumped, he mumbles and asks her to untangle it for him. She sits down, gently running her fingers through the mess in his hair, thinking that it must have hurt. She asks him what he was even doing for his hair to end up this way. When she finishes detangling, she picks him up from the floor and asks again, what exactly was he doing there? But Michael immediately replies that it's none of her business. She notices a leaf tangled in his hair, removes it, and says that she gets it. He must have been exploring. He turns flustered, quickly shouting again that she's ugly and not to touch him. Vincent returns just then, asking whether Michael was there. Lila, finally losing her composure, turns to him and asks if Michael is always like this. Vincent confirms with a shrug that Michael is indeed a bit of a handful, so yes, he's always like this. The next day, Vincent tells her more. He explains that Michael is awkward around others because he spent most of his time alone. He then takes her on a tour of the manor. It's so vast that Lila feels a little nervous, afraid she might get lost. Vincent smiles and tells her that he'll show her the rest of the estate later. She's stunned to realize that even more space is left. She can't believe a child like Michael has to live all alone in such a huge place. No wonder he turned out this way. Vincent then takes her to the kitchen. Cooper, the chef, greets her formally. She thanks him for the welcome, but it's clear from his expression that he's not the least bit happy to see her. He tells her coldly that he'll go prepare dinner. She nods and steps out of the kitchen. As she exits, she sees Michael running by, dashing quickly. She calls his name, and he flinches. She questions him, asking what brought him here. Michael replies curtly, "What does she mean? It's his house. He can go anywhere he wants." Lila is truly at the last stage of her patience. She tries to calm herself, and instead asks him if he'd like some tea. She adds that she's planning to have some desserts with it too, and that she's heard the fruit in the north is amazing. Michael, proud and sure, says that it's true. The fruits in the north are much tastier than those in the capital. She brightens, asking if he can tell her more about the north over a cup of tea. He sighs, saying she's too ignorant and super ugly, so she should at least try to be smart. Still, since she's trying to learn, he'll make an exception and teach her. Despite the harsh words, there's something innocent and adorable about the way he says it. But then, he lashes out again, asking her why she wears clothes like this. He says that if she's so ugly, she should at least try to dress well. Lila answers calmly, it's because she likes dresses like this. Michael mutters that if 2 ugly people get married, they'll have an ugly child, and that's the problem. Lila pauses. Something feels strange about the way he keeps bringing up how ugly people should do this or that. It's as if he's been brainwashed into believing it. She finally asks him, who told him that ugly people shouldn't marry each other? He flinches, caught off guard, and asks why she wants to know. She explains gently, it's because, to her, the Duke doesn't look ugly at all. Michael scoffs, saying that her standards must be really low. But Lila playfully flexes, saying she actually has super high standards. Michael sighs, then tells her that his mother said it. She told him that both his father and his uncle are ugly, and that he's ugly too because he takes after his dad. Lila says okay without thinking, but as the words sink in, she's genuinely shocked. To her, Michael looks like an angel. Shouldn't a child look beautiful in their mother's eyes no matter what? But his mother abandoned him. After his father died, she left to be with her lover. Lila has been living in this world for years now, yet she still can't get used to it. Her sugar levels are dropping. She reaches out to grab a tart only to find it gone. She turns to Michael and asks if he was hungry and ate it. He says no, he just didn't have lunch. She begins wiping his face gently, asking him why he skipped lunch. If he keeps skipping meals, he won't grow tall. She tells him firmly to make sure he eats properly. Michael blushes deeply, then stands up and declares that, in any case, he is against it. He is against her marrying his uncle, and he's going to make sure it doesn't happen. He runs off. Lila sighs, thinking that he doesn't need to worry. His uncle isn't interested in her either. Nearby, the maid sighs in frustration, saying she can't believe Michael ate all of the tarts. She complains that if he doesn't maintain his figure with such an ugly face, there's no hope. She tells Lila not to give him more desserts. Lila asks why. The maid explains that there are rules that the former Duchess made for Michael. And now, Lila has broken one of them.